Milestone 5, Task 2. Erica, you've been working on your environmental portraits and your headshots for this. You've picked a very interesting model to do this, your art teacher. And her studio is a great place to take the image. It puts her in a very creative environment. So one of the main things I want to talk to you about is the composition, and you know how you're presenting the information with your main subject, of course, who is your model. And looking at your first image that you submitted, you actually let's look at the composition. There's actually two different pictures happening, because it's split right in half. In this particular half, there's really nothing going on. There's no main subject, and then you have all the information over to the side. So in this case, this is probably more like a vertical shot. Also, the use of rule of thirds is to place your main subject in using the rule of thirds. So let's look at the rule of thirds. It's an imaginary lines, two horizontally and two vertically, that divide the image into 9 equal parts. But the third is your intersection lines. So your subject could be on this entire line, or a part of them where you want to direct the viewer would be where these X's are in the image. So in this case, for demonstration purposes, I'm going to do a little crop. I want to keep it in the same aspect ratio as you shot it. Everything that you're turning in should be in that ratio. So I hold down the shift key when I reduce the size, except here we're going to probably not be able to do that. I'm not going to try to flip it while I'm making a discrete. So I'll just do this and guesstimate what it is. So in this case, your model would be, she'd be a third over. Where is it that you want to put the attention? And in this one, it's probably her whole activity and what she's doing. So we could actually come in a little bit closer. So this would be closer to, okay, using that rule of thirds, where the vertical line and the horizontal line merge as far as, or intersect where her head is. And then our eye is going to go down and see the area where she's writing and whatnot. So this would be a better use of the composition. I have opened some shadows and added some blacks just to pop it out. The main thing is we're looking at your composition. Now next one, you've cropped it kind of interestingly. So where my eye goes is more towards the hands, because that's really what this is about. She's becoming a frame for your hands. So you want to even make that more into the rule of thirds if possible. A lot of this has to be done in camera. I can only kind of talk to you about it. But when you're cropping a face off, now you're taking attention away from there. The eye is going to go into this area on the board. So here I can do that. I can, get the whole thing, hold the shift key. And move it till your hands are in that, like, rule of thirds. So this would be the intersecting line, would draw my attention to the hand. This is how you naturally go. You could even crop off more. This is a little bit uncomfortable up here. So this, when you do a real tight crop like that, you can crop it even tighter. So how could we do that? Well, this could also be a vertical. But we need to stick with having a rule of thirds as our, so here we have rule of thirds, here it is. So this would be a tighter crop, but it works pretty well. And my eye is going to go right to the hand area. This one also, nice shot. Got a lot of space that isn't utilized here, and she's dead center. So it'd be better to have her using the rule of thirds. Now there's no way I can crop it, because if I do, I get rid of these cute, nice boots. Her outfit is a good part of this picture. Also, when you're taking images, also you need to have your subject, because you can see it more in the camera, that maybe all these stickies aren't the best thing. These pink ones aren't the best thing. They're going to take all the attention. My eye first goes to those pink stickies. And then there's a lot of other things that maybe could have been, cleaned up or moved in the image, so that, because in the photograph you're going to see things that your eye just kind of dismisses. Now as you get more close-ups, the same principles apply. So let's look at this particular close-up. It's a kind of a nice environment. You've got these steps, which it's a backdrop. It's kind of warm. The light is picking up the warmth of the walls, and I think it's working pretty well. But you are using a lens, 35mm lens. And it's probably closer to, well, that would be closer to a 50, so that's okay. But for portraiture, it's better to go like 80 or 105. So it flattens out the image, and I'm just going to show you what happens here. So if I go and make it into more like an 80 or 105 lens, you can see it flattens out the whole picture, and it gets rid of any distortion that may start to occur. So the wider the angle lens from the position you shot it, the more distortion you're going to get. So the idea is to flatten out your subject as much as possible when shooting. I think this is a great shot. I like her hand. She's got kind of a nice look on her face. Good 3/4 angle. She's a little she's kind of too centered. And utilizing the rule of thirds, we'd have to make some adjustments. That's mostly in your positioning, however. Because if I crop this to be a vertical, I lose the hand, so I think you stick with it. The color in the background on the walls kind of matches her outfit, so there is a nice movement that's going on in that image. This one, her eyes are a little too close to the top. When you're doing portraiture, the rule of thirds would be the eyes would be on the third, so it would be dropped down a bit. A couple of ways to get rid of the top of the stairs is that you get up higher and shoot down, so that you're not shooting, and shooting down a little bit is better than shooting up at usually just for the look of it. Here she's got a nice look on her face. You actually have nice lighting coming from the side, so you have shadow side and highlight side, but she's like just center and static. These steps are kind of an interesting texture, but I think this one works better vertically. So let's look at placement of her as I'm trying to get the same aspect ratio as your original out of the camera image. So I'm going to see, I want to put her in rule of thirds. Her eyes should be in rule of thirds. A lot of this is just, it's really a visual thing. So here. So now her eyes are in rule of thirds. And let's go back and look at what rule of thirds here. This is rule of thirds. So on a vertical, the eyes would be on this line, okay? And then the prominent eye on here. And that's visual, so you wouldn't put one eye over on the edge and one eye here. It would be somewhat centered. So here is the eye, is like a rule of thirds here and here. So in order, it's kind of like the line would be coming down her nose. It's very comfortable to look at that. And you've got this nice design now on the side. Everything kind of melds and blends together. So and this is how you can shoot in camera as you get more experience. Now when I'm looking at your contact sheet, you know, I think you did a great job on it, you know, looking at, you know, if you're looking back now, that how do you compose, and the rule of thirds was part of this task. Also using the correct lenses. But one of the things for making the contact sheet is that there's no cropping. You're not to touch it at all, and these images are cropped. And they're cropped very uncomfortably, so I feel like you've squashed your model into a box, and I don't think you saw that way. This could have been an interesting pose. You've cropped it off. This is post-production, and these images are cropped, and they're cropped kind of awkwardly again. So all these have to be turned in without any cropping. You have like an 18mm lens here. That's a wide angle lens, and for portraiture, really not a good idea, especially on headshots. So on your camera, you'd want to use as long of a focal length as possible, so 80 to 105, which would be on a normal lens, and then on your lens, of course, you have to use the compensation chart. Again, these are all cropped from the original size, so I can't really even talk to you about the composition because I don't know how you shot it, other than the way they're cropped, they feel very confined. You want to be sure you leave enough breathing room for your images and your model. To express themselves. So I don't know how much cropping you've done on here. Also, you're getting a pink cast or yellow. The wall color, anytime you're against any kind of colored walls, it's going to go onto the skin. And here, at least it's a warm color. But that's why she's so warm, she's picking up a lot of that color. You might have to do some corrections on that. But, you know, at this point, just keeping that in mind. But I think, you know, you really have some great shots, and I'm sure she's going to love her pictures. If you do want to do any lens correction, you can use your lens correction tools, and in post-production, and just kind of flatten out your image a little bit. You go back in with your crop tool And then you have to crop the lines or else use a fill. So this even flattens her out more. It's especially wide angle on a person, the nose protrudes and it accentuates it, so that it helps to kind of flatten out the face a little bit. Not too flat, but you know, just enough to kind of bring out the features correctly. So you should resubmit this on with the contact sheet with no cropping.